Hi, I am Ria Mehta, and I'm the president of EmpowHer Club. At EmpowHer, our goal is to inspire and enable women in technology and various other fields. Our intention is to know successful women in their fields and learn from their journeys, the challenges they've encountered, how they overcame those, and lessons learned along the way. Today, we have the honor of welcoming Miss Alexis Hand. She is a growth-minded professional with passion for technology. She has completed her bachelor's degree from UC Berkeley in data science and currently works for Confluent. Having spearheaded transformative projects and navigated complex technological landscapes, Ms. Hand brings a wealth of experience and wisdom to the table. Her insights into the ever-evolving world of IT promise to enlighten and inspire us all. Without further ado, let us delve into the fascinating journey and invaluable insights. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to the remarkable leader. Welcome, Ms. Hand. It's lovely to have you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so without further ado, let's just get started with some of the questions. So, firstly, what are some of your personal experiences and reasons that motivated you to pursue a career in IT?
Great question. I actually started off very far from a career in tech. I went into college with an intention to study political science because that had been my big background and kind of things that I was interested in growing up. But very quickly, I actually changed my major a few times from cognitive science, explored a little bit of neuroscience, and then eventually into data science, which is what I graduated with. And this kind of journey has evolved organically over time, primarily because I was more interested in how people interact and why they do the things that they do, right? And learning more into the cognitive science field, which actually has a big component on like human computer interfaces or more of the like machine learning components that we talk about
Yeah.
all the time now. It dawned on me that technology and alongside of human interactions is becoming a more and more prevalent topic of conversation. It's becoming a more prevalent industry overall. And just noticing those trends, I wanted to be at a position where I am at the front of that kind of industrial transformation, right? So I think it came about more of an organic journey towards where I ended up that I did today. In terms of my particular role now, that was also a very organic kind of journey. I started off during college interning for a startup based out of San Francisco. And the first half of the year, I was in their engineering team, specifically focused on natural language processing. And after that experience is when I realized, okay, engineering is cool and being at the forefront of like tech and development is cool, but I want to be able to be at a position where I can almost translate technical concepts to for business value, which means interacting with customers more, right? And so then the second half of the year, I ended up kind of doing more like a lateral transfer to support their customer success team, which was very business focused, right? So
Yeah.
having had those two experiences together, I kind of merged those two and thought, asked myself, okay, what do I want to do next? And that's how I stumbled upon the solutions engineering role, and that's what I've been doing the past 3 years.
I think that's really cool. I also think it's really interesting how it was very organic and how in the beginning, even if it wasn't necessarily your first choice or what you initially thought you wanted, I think we can all say that it's grown into like a big thing for you and great success has come your way.
Yeah,
So yeah, continuing to talk about your particular career, have you drawn professional inspiration from other women? Tell us about someone who has inspired you.
absolutely. There are obviously a growing number of women in the heavily male-dominated industries, in particular tech. At the same time, though, there is still a severe lack in female representation and people of color, women of color in particular. And so, every woman that I come across in my company, I try to make have a more of a meaningful interaction with them, whether it's setting up a one-on-one call or grabbing coffee with them. So there are definitely several influences. Today, I think, especially as someone who has thinking of people who are still at my company today, our president, her name is Erica Schultz. She has been a very a very, very inspiring person for me. I would like to have had a personal relationship with her, but she's so many levels above me that I don't necessarily get to talk to her often. But that being said, she's pretty pretty young for the leadership position that she holds. She's in her 40s or so, and she is almost the face of my company today, where she leads a lot of the go-to-market strategies, the overall direction that the company should go. But more importantly, she is the face that represents the women and makes time to have a women-based community. We call it WIN, actually, WIN. And we have this network of women that also connect and do more like speedy mentorship at a time. So this is someone that's not only in a position of leadership, very high leadership at such a young age, but also someone who dedicates her time to make sure that her community is cared for and represented. So I draw inspiration from her.
I think that's really awesome. I also think it's really awesome about how there's so many different women that you've taken inspiration from and how you've really focused on making those relationships deeper as well through like coffee and things like that, like you just mentioned. I think that's really great. I think it's really important to uplift each other, especially if there is like, less women in IT as a field. So continuing on, talking a little bit more away from the actual field, can you provide some examples of how you successfully managed to balance your career in IT with your other responsibilities and commitments outside of work? In addition to that, what strategies do you employ to maintain a healthy work-life balance?
Absolutely. So when you first start your career after as a fresh college grad, I think many people will experience this as soon as you graduate college, and it's going to be that you're extremely eager to get started, right? You have this newfound motivation, you're independent, you're out of college, you're making your own money, it's exciting, but it can oftentimes become very blurry in a way where your life becomes your work. I have friends that have definitely fallen into that category and have had to kind of bring themselves back into doing things that are meaningful for them as well. So I think work-life balance is incredibly important. That being said, some of the ways that I manage that is making sure that my mind almost turns off after 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., whenever my workday is done, right? Because at the end of the day, to be able to show up for your job as in the best possible sense, like you also need to take care of yourself. So
Yes.
I take a lot of time in the morning to have like my little morning routine, for example. And it can be very silly things, just waking up and making my bed, make a cute little cup of coffee, and then I do my skincare in the morning. I put on some music and like hype myself up for the day. So it's a little morning time in the AM. And then once the workday is over, I'm more of a routine-based person, so I like to make sure like I get things done. So just going to the gym, just moving my body because when you're working, you're just, a lot of us are in front of a laptop all day, right? So you don't really get to move a lot. And I found that to be really mentally draining afterwards. So I make sure that I have a little bit, whether it's a quick walk or a little exercise, whatever. Those things are more than plenty for me. I have some friends who like to make plans during the week to feel more connected with everyone, especially since a lot of us are still in a very remote world,
Yeah.
especially with just, companies changing overall in terms of being very remote first. So I think a little bit of social interaction sprinkled in there also really helps.
Yeah, I think that's really important, especially the social interaction part. Like I've spoken to other women in the past who also talked about how remote is like a lot harder because you're not necessarily interacting with people that much. And that really just changes the way that your workday goes. So I think it's really important that you bring that up as well. So, moving on, how did you navigate challenges related to imposter syndrome and self-doubt as a female leader? And what advice would you give to other women aspiring to leadership roles in technology?
Yeah, this I think is a really important question because we talk about imposter syndrome all the time, but it feels very foreign to you unless you start experiencing it. And I very much so did because I was fresh out of college, working in a role that is not very, um, how do you say it? Not very entry level friendly because I was being thrown right into customer meetings, right? Where I'm
Yeah.
talking to mostly men who are mostly in their 50s. So they're like my parents' age. And my role is to tell them what to do about their technical architecture, right? So oftentimes I'm sitting there feeling, oh my God, like I do not know what I'm talking about. What am I doing here, right? And that is exactly it, imposter syndrome. Um, to be honest, I think I was really struggling with that for at least like a year or so on the job. But
Yeah.
what really helped in navigating is in the first, not comparing myself to the people around me, right? If you and I think it's a comparison to a can be healthy to a certain degree because the ultimate intent is for you to be better, right? But at the same time, comparison can absolutely be the thief of joy in that I kept trying to get to a level of my colleagues who were 20 years older than me, who had 20 years more of experience than I did. And I realized at some point that that's just not a very healthy mindset for me to have. So instead of comparing to other people, I started comparing myself to the quarter before, right? By
Yeah.
leaving almost a history of my accomplishments or like things that I was working on each quarter or like each, a time frame, I would be able to then say, okay, XYZ is what I did last year. What can I focus on this year to kind of build on the skills that I'm looking to gain? And that I think was incredibly helpful. Second is talking about it. I talk to my friends, I talk to my mentors and colleagues in the workspace. My managers at the time were also incredibly supportive people, men, but I talk to them about how difficult it can be for me sometimes. And having that kind of people to maybe not necessarily even relate, but to at least empathize and understand your experience is extremely powerful because it also helps build your network of supporters, right? And if
Yeah.
anything else, I think the most important thing is we like to talk to people who we know will relate to us, right? So it's a
Yes.
lot more intuitive for me to go to another woman and and talk about my feelings and experience, and I know she will understand. But at the same time, I think it's incredibly important to bridge the gap so that the men in our workspace have an understanding of what that experience feels like. And by going to them and telling them that this is what it's like been like for me, has also been incredibly helpful, I think, for them to also understand where I'm coming from and help be the voice around me when it's necessary.
Yeah, I think talking to people is really important, not just for your own mental health, but also, like you said, for awareness, so that like people who don't necessarily go through the same struggles also understand like the struggle behind it and how you can really help yourself and, feel better and gain more confidence throughout your time in your career. So I think that was really insightful as well. Talking more about self-doubt and being a female leader. As a female leader, how do you approach networking and professional development opportunities? Can you discuss any strategies that you've used to expand your network and build support systems?
Absolutely. I think networking is really, really important. And I know people say it all the time, but I think I've experienced that almost firsthand in terms of the impact it has on knowing the people around you, and if not around you, knowing people on the outside of the organization. When I first started my job 3 years ago, I made it kind of my goal for that first couple months or so to reach out to um, any random name almost. Like if there was a leader, if there was a leader in our product organization, right, I would basically just pick one and I would have a call with them. I would speak to someone in the support organization. So basically all these different teams that I might not even work with on the day to day, I would reach out to introduce myself, but also to gain a better understanding of how we would cross functionally collaborate. But also, it's just because it's good to know the people that you're going to be working with, right? Even if it's the multi thousands of employee kind of company. So in order to navigate that, I think what helped on my case was being very proactive about reaching out to people. Going into it with a general belief that people are here to help you and want to talk to you is very beneficial. Oftentimes it can get scary reaching out to someone who is like a VP, right? But having that, giving them like the positive benefit of doubt, if you will, I think takes you a lot further because it gives you the confidence you need and allows you to believe that they have the intention to want to help you. So I think being proactive about reaching out was incredibly helpful. Um, in any in-person events, I was very uh, intentional about making sure that I say hi to everyone, even if I don't know them, even if I don't have a conversation for more than 5 minutes, and making sure that they might not know me very well, but they know of me, right? So it just
Yes.
expanding that network of people that would say, "Oh, Alexis, yeah, 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 I know her," although like they might not know anything else about me, right? So
Yes.
yeah, being proactive about reaching out and always being intentional about introducing yourself, I think took me far there.
Yeah, I think it's also really important how you mentioned to be proactive because like, taking the first step is always something that's like scary, but it's also, equally rewarding and important like when you get to talk to other people and understand their roles and just as a whole figure out like what your place in your company and what their place in your company is as well is also very important. Um, so shifting gears a little bit, talking less about networking and like that kind of stuff, what do you believe are the biggest challenges facing women in technology today, and what steps do you think need to be taken to address them?
Hmm. I think there's still a lot of systemic things that we're going to need to work towards collaboratively together. Um, and that being just, the fact that if you look at the statistics, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, women still face gaps in our income, like the salary we make compared to the same role that another man might have in the industry, right? There's subtle discrimination around women who might want to take maternity leave at some point. So these are all systemic problems that I don't think are gone at this time. I think as a society, though, we're making progress in that direction. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have an answer for how to solve that, right? But I would say I think it's important to have conversations like this, not only amongst ourselves, amongst the women, but like I said earlier, with the men too. Whenever I get a chance, even though it's like a casual conversation, I talk about it with my guy friends, right? I
Yeah.
make sure they also understand because I believe that will take us further if we can all go together into that direction of change. But secondarily, imposter syndrome is hard and it comes from all of these systemic issues, but it also comes from us believing or not being as confident as we can or should be, right? And I think that that can be challenged and that can be something we work towards, right? you I think it's so inevitable and normal to be scared and anxious and not so confident, especially when you first start your like first time job out of college or even in your internships, right? But consistently reminding yourself that you are there for a reason, you are wanted there for a reason. And even if you don't feel very good about like your skills now, you will absolutely get there. And telling yourself that and reminding yourself and instilling that self-confidence, I think is also incredibly important. So that can also help navigate not only like the imposter syndrome, but overall like your influence and your sense of belonging in a workspace.
Yeah, and I think we can actually make a connection between both the points that you just mentioned. So like firstly, instilling self-confidence is really important for you, but also because when you have that confidence, you can then talk about some of the struggles and some of the issues that you've been dealing with. And then also like as you mentioned before, talking to like your guy friends, like really anyone about these struggles is really helpful. And it's a really nice way to educate and make people aware about certain situations that they may not have been aware of before. And I think that's really important as well. Um, Talking more along the lines of like spreading awareness and, talking to other people, um, if there's one thing that you had to tell young women who are just starting to work in your field, what would it be and what would you like them to know?
One thing. Oh, I'm trying not to think of something that sounds cliche. Um, Oh, this is cliche. I'm sorry, but the only thing I
It's
can think
okay.
of, if I had to say one, is that like please absolutely believe in yourself. There is going to be voices inside your head. There might even be people around you that might make you feel otherwise, but I think like remind yourself like you belong there, you can do it. And if you don't believe you can, there will always be people around you to support you and tell you that you can if you need that reminder. And I would really want young women to believe in that in themselves.
Yeah, I think that's really nice. Well, thank you for all of your answers. That concludes the interview. I just want to say thank you one more time for being here and being a part of this. We really appreciate all the advice that we've gotten today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.